Includes how many kidneys? Two kidneys. How many ureters? Two. So 2 kidneys, 2 ureters. How many urinary bladder? One only. And how many ureters? One. That's the list. So what does urinary system include? It includes 2 kidneys, 2 ureters, 1 urinary bladder, 1 ureter. It's not like digestive system where you have so many names right in the beginning. But these 4 parts have lots of parts within them, some of them microscopic and others gross anatomy. The kidney. From a mile away, given this model, you'll identify this as kidney, right? Everyone? Or this model for that matter. These kidneys are located where in the body? If you had to describe the location of kidney in your own body, where is it? It's in the abdominal cavity, right? Medially located toward the midline, and you have 2 of them. Of the 2, right kidney naturally is at a lower level than the left one. There's a slight difference. Can you guess why that could be so? What could be possible reason that the right kidney is slightly lower? Because of the liver. There is a huge liver on the right side, and you saw the preserved liver. And when the liver is well and alive, it's heavy. It's full of fluid, blood going in and out. And liver has its own bile juice that it produces. So it's a pretty heavy organ that is on the right side pushing the right kidney. And to allow for liver's placement, right kidney is slightly lower. So that's something to keep in mind, just out of interest. The other thing that will be beyond anatomy 1 is, given the model of the kidney, be that coronal section, you all know this to be coronal section, right? Frontal section, you have to know the section. Whether it be the sectioned kidney like this, or it is intact full kidney without sectioning, you should be able to tell right kidney from left. So given this model, identify this now as, what does the model represent? In the past, you could say kidney and get by with it.
Right kidney.
It'll be the right kidney. And one could say, well, you can put it on the left side equally well. You could not, because the ureter's direction tells you it has to go downward with the urine, not upward. This is the right kidney. How about this one?
Left.
Left kidney. So, and we have multiple of the same, right and left, etc. We have another left kidney. So no longer could you just say this kidney, you'll have to say right or left. Then what you do is first study external anatomy of kidney, whether it is a large model or small fist-sized model, you have to study externally. So let's say this is not a dissected model. That means you do not have the coronal section and you are looking at it from outside. It's obvious then that the convex part of the kidney is lateral. Agreed? And the indented part, which is the hilum in this case, what would be a good first part to the name? Hilum. What would you say this hilum to be? What would you say this artery to be? What would you say this artery to be? Renal artery. What would you say this hilum to be? Renal hilum. Very much like you have lymphatic hilum. So renal hilum is medial aspect of the kidney. And because when you say it is medially located, it could be whichever direction. But we know that it's the indented part, the renal hilum, which is toward the midline, and this is lateral. So externally, that's what you note. You also note that at the renal hilum, we have a number of structures attached here. We see the ureter attached at the renal hilum. We see renal artery come in. We see renal vein go out. And all of that is happening where there is an opening, where there is a possibility in the form of renal hilum. What is this part then? Shown in brown color.
Renal capsule.
Renal capsule. These things we shouldn't even have to take time, right? We automatically should know, having done one topic. So yes, it is renal capsule. Like other organs, renal capsule is connective tissue capsule. Kidneys are located attached to the posterior wall, and there's hardly any protection back there other than vertebral column in the middle, but kidneys are not in the middle. So kidneys are to be protected by more than one means to prevent the injuries by the blows in the back. And kidneys are very well protected by different layers of protection. Of course, we know connective tissue here, but more than that, as shock absorber, we have a lot of adipose tissue around kidney. That adipose tissue makes what is called adipose capsule. So as you come in from outside, you first have adipose capsule. After you remove that, then you see the renal capsule, both of them protecting the kidney. The ends, the superior and inferior aspects of the kidney are called renal poles. So this is the superior renal pole and that's the inferior renal pole. Renal pertains to kidney. Now we cut a coronal section of the kidney. As you come in, the peripheral tissue closer to the capsule would be called what? Give it a name.
Renal cortex.
It will be renal cortex. Then we do lymphatic cortex, renal cortex. The middle tissue closer to the hilum would be what? Or toward the middle, I should say, would be what?
Renal medulla.
Renal medulla. So as you look at this colored model, don't go by colors, you don't know which model we will ask you of. But as you look at this, so what you see as yellow material closer to the capsule would obviously be renal cortex. And as you come inside, I would say more of this pinkish material represents renal medulla. But then you have this part closer to the hilum where you do not have tissue of the cortex or the medulla. What you have is almost, one can say, empty space, but it's really not empty because there are tubular structures. All of this space where you do not have cortex or medulla is renal sinus. So inside the capsule, then we come across three parts, three regions: renal sinus, renal medulla, renal cortex. From outside in, renal cortex, renal medulla, renal sinus, which is closer to this. Therefore, I said plus, plus, plus. If you don't find any of these labels, you're responsible to still know it. So be writing those parts.
There's renal cortex, then renal medulla.
If you're coming from capsule,
Oh, okay. Can you show the renal cortex part?
all of this yellow,
Okay.
which is more peripheral, more outer, and then this is more medulla here, and then this is the sinus. Three regions. Now as we look at the renal cortical tissue, we see that in this model represented by yellow, the tissue of the renal cortex is extended in the renal medulla. You see the extension? This is the cortex, and this tissue is going here in the medulla part. Same is the case here. So the extensions of the renal cortical tissue in the medulla are called renal columns. They're like columns in between. The region is still medulla, and this tissue, this part here, is renal column. Because renal column has come in into the medulla, the medullary tissue is now divided in the form of these cone-shaped structures, in the form of these pyramid-shaped structures. Each of this is therefore called renal pyramid. Very much like we saw in the lymph nodes. Yes, the regions have their names, but how the tissue is organized gets them further names. Renal medulla is all of this, but renal medulla is organized in the form of renal pyramids. Note that the way pyramids are organized, their base part, the wider part, is toward the cortex, and their pointed part is toward the sinus. Is that what you see? The pointed part is all directed toward the sinus. The pointed part of each pyramid is called renal papilla, because you know papilla means bump or the pointed structure. So each pyramid has its renal papilla. Note that renal papilla of each pyramid, actually renal papilla of the pyramid has tiny holes in it, called, that region is called area cribrosa. So imagine this pyramid with its pointed papilla with tiny holes in it, dripping urine out of it. That urine that drips from tiny holes, tiny pores there, is not allowed to escape. Instead, it is caught into funnel-like structure here. See that? This part is capturing the droplets that will come out here. This one is capturing what this drops, and so on. This funnel-like part toward the renal papilla is called the minor calyx. Plural will not be calyxes. Plural will be calyces. So what we are seeing is then each renal pyramid's papilla is next to a minor calyx that is going to catch what drips out of those holes in renal papilla. So you'll identify this as minor calyx. You'll identify this as another minor calyx. And this one is cut open minor calyx, and so on. Note that this minor calyx and this one merge here. See how they come together? So what is coming through here and this fluid then comes at this location. Where the minor calyces merge, what forms is called major calyx. So this is a minor calyx, this is another one, that's another one, and all three seem to merge here at the major calyx. These two are merging here. So as minor calyces come together, what forms would be major calyces. Major calyces, if you continue to follow it, this is a minor calyx, that's another one, they are coming together here. So this is the major calyx, this is another major calyx. As major calyces merge, they are merging into the wider part of the ureter that is attached here. The wider part of ureter, the proximal wider part of the ureter is called renal pelvis. So all of the urine that is being collected in this sequence from minor calyces to major to renal pelvis would then go into the ureter. And from ureter it will go into the urinary bladder. From urinary bladder it will travel through urethra when voiding or urination happens. And then it escapes by the opening which is urethral orifice. That's the journey of the urine proper, but there is more fluid journey before we get to the tip of the pyramid. Okay? So now we have identified structures which are located, at least the urinary structures which are located in the sinus. We have the vascular structures to identify as well, which we would pretty quickly. So now we see the transportation of the urine pathway here. Coming back to the cortex here one more time. Cortex as extended here is called the column, and these are renal columns. All of these structures, all of this internal mass of kidney is being served by blood vessels, as you would expect. What functions do urinary system have? Multiple functions. What do you know? What does your urinary system do? It removes waste, you said, right? What is removal of waste called? What is the scientific term for removal of waste?
Excretion.
Excretion. Excretion is the wider term. It's any kind of waste removal. What are the different types of excretory processes. In other words, what are different examples of excretion?